What's going on, college football fans, and welcome back to the First and Long College Football Show. I am your co-host, Marcus. I am flying solo today. Mason is out on the road handling business, so stay safe out there, Mason. I wanted to come and give you guys my best breakdown of the Georgia Tech Florida State game that's going on this weekend, week 0. It's really the only game that's worth a damn to talk about, guys. So I wanted to come give you my 2 cents on the game. Georgia Tech is not a team that a whole lot of people have talked about at all. It's hard to find information on this team. I'm going to give you a quick synopsis of the offense and the defense of Georgia Tech, and I'm going to do the same for Florida State, even though we have done a breakdown video on Florida State. So go check that out in the videos section there. We did a deep dive. It's an hour-long video breaking down every position group of Florida State. And if you don't know anything about the team, you will after the end of that video. So we invite you to go check that out. And if you haven't hit the subscribe button, we invite you to hit the subscribe button now and come and hang out with us on the First and Long College Football Show, because we're not doing all of our shows for week 0, but next week we have a big week planned, and that is going to continue every single week throughout the college football season in 2024. We've got live shows that are going to be starting on Tuesday nights. Looks like 7:30 p.m. That's why you need to be subscribed, because we're going to put a community post out saying exactly what time and where to find all this stuff, all these shows. But Tuesday night, 7 or 7:30 p.m. undecided at this moment, but we'll let you know. As I said, we will do our prediction shows. We're going to talk the biggest matchups in college football, and we're also going to talk about whatever you want to talk about. You're going to be able to come on the show. You can do it through the live chat, or you're going to be able to follow a link and come and join us on the show, and let's talk some college football in between our breakdowns, of course, that we are recording. We invite all of our subscribed and non-subscribed fans to come and check that out. It's going to be whole heck of a lot of fun. We just didn't feel like week 0 there was enough. We didn't want to. We don't want to shoot our load too early, guys. It's a long season. We want to get really prepared for next week, and we're going to have some awesome shows for you guys. Um, Reaction shows are going to be released on Sundays at 11 a.m. Those are one of my favorites. We talk about what we just saw the day before in college football. Be a little funky that first week because we got Labor Day weekend. We'll have games Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday. But we'll figure out a way to get it done. Probably just going to have some extra shows that weekend just to kind of bring in college football all together. We're all so daggum excited about the 2024 season, and I can't wait to talk about it with you guys. But here is my breakdown on the Florida State Georgia Tech game in Dublin this weekend. Florida State is currently 11.5-point favorite. Over under set at 55.5. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope that we'll see you again on the First and Long College Football Show. Georgia Tech is a team that I feel like not a lot of people are talking about, and for good reason, right? Georgia Tech hasn't necessarily been a powerhouse over the last few years. Look, I do feel like Brent Key is doing a really good job. This is a guy that I feel like really does care about Georgia Tech football. Ex offensive lineman. It really showed last year. Georgia Tech had a good offensive line. We're going to kind of break that down. I'm going to break down Georgia Tech probably a little bit more than I will Florida State. I'm going to do both, but Florida State is a team that we've done a deep dive on. We've done over an hour-long video on Florida State and their whole roster, and we'd love for you guys to go check that out in the video section. We did a deep dive on like 35 teams. Georgia Tech just was not one of those 35 teams that we did. So, and I don't feel like a lot of people nationwide really are paying a whole lot of attention to Georgia Tech. So I wanted to shed a little bit of light on what they've got going on there at Tech right now. So let's start off with Florida State. Let's talk about the offense. Alex Atkins is back for his 3rd season as the offensive coordinator for FSU. This was a top 20 offense in 2023. Two of his or his first 2 years as offensive coordinator, he has had a top 20 offense, but only 24% returning production in 2024. So not a lot coming back. I mean, this is, for all intents and purposes, this is a totally new offensive personnel group. Jordan Travis, Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman, among others, are gone to the NFL and graduated out. So you bring in DJU there at quarterback, who everybody knows it spent years at Clemson, but last year spent his time at Oregon State. 2,638 yards passing, 21 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. So you bring him in to be your quarterback, and look, really, kind of the one catch on him is the 57% completion rate. That was he was a fourth-year guy. He didn't start all 4 years, but he has played some in all 4 years and started a couple of those years. And 57% completion rate leaves a little bit to be desired. I think Florida State fans are gonna hope that ticks up a little bit. 81 QBR, which was 12th in the country. But look, this Florida State offense, as I said, it's going to be totally different because you've got a whole new personnel group. Your strength is not throwing up 50-50 balls like it was at the beginning of last year when you had Jordan Travis healthy. I think this team is going to be ready to run the football, and I know I'm not the only one that feels that way. You bring in Roydell Williams into the running back room. He comes over from Alabama, 561 yards rushing last year, and he is going to accompany Lawrence Tafili, who also returns after a 463-yard season. This team was not well known, I wouldn't say, for running the football last year. Number 77th nationally in rushing yards per game in 2023. I think that's going to tick way up. I think if Florida State looks to be successful in 2024, they're going to have to be a top 25 rushing offense. And I think they do have the personnel to do that. It's going to be in the passing game. Who's going to step up as a wide receiver, that go-to guy? You've got a couple of guys that you think are going to be able to be those guys. Malik Benson, you bring over from Alabama. Ja'Kai Douglas makes his return after 243 yards receiving last year and 4 touchdowns. You just need some of those young guys that you've recruited to step up, right? You need Malik Benson, who, frankly, was never a go-to guy. This guy's got some serious speed, and you feel like he can kind of be a breakaway wide receiver, a guy that can get behind some defenses. But we really just didn't see that at Alabama. I mean, we never really saw his talent, fully realized, I don't think. So we'll have to see if Malik Benson can step up for this team this year. But kind of piggybacking off of that thought that, this team needs to be a running team, part of the reason I think that as well is because of this offensive line. You return starters at the tackle spots and the center. You bring in some transfers, one of them from Alabama there at guard. So you got a couple of options there that I think are pretty good. This should be a good offensive line. It has a chance to be a great offensive line as far as 2024 teams go. So that's something certainly keep your eye on. But I think the identity is definitely going to change for Florida State this season as they will look to run the football after the departure of some serious talent there, as far as your pass catchers and your quarterback as well. So let's talk about the defense a little bit. Florida State brings back Adam Fuller, 5th season as the defensive coordinator. Top 25 scoring defenses in 22 and 23. You return 50% production this season, so you get half of that production back. You lose some major pieces in the defensive line room. You do return Patrick Payton at defensive end, 40 tackles, 14.5 tackles for loss, 10 pass deflections, 7 sacks, and 7 QB hurries. That is a mouthful there from Patrick Payton, really putting in the work at defensive end. And you also bring back Joshua Farmer at defensive tackle with 32 tackles last year, 7 tackles for loss, and 5 sacks. So you do return a couple of nice pieces, and you'll need some young guys and some transfers that you brought in, a good bit of transfers. We'll kind of pull up the roster here in just a second. You can kind of see. I'll go ahead and pull it up. There on the right, anybody in red there is guys that are transferring in. You bring in Marvin Jones Jr. from Georgia, who looks, most people would consider him to be a really talented guy. Maybe just not realized coming out of that Georgia defense that is so crowded with talent, right? Just tons of linebackers and or end or edge players, whatever you want to call them. So talent there, yes. for sure things. I don't know. Darrell Jackson looks to be a pretty good piece. I think it's going to be a decent defensive line group. I don't think it's going to be bad at all. We just got to see how good it can be, right? With some of these new faces that you got. I like the starters. We'll just have to kind of see what the depth looks like. And look, Georgia Tech's got a good offensive line. We're going to talk about it here in just a second, but Georgia Tech has got a good offensive line, and they're a good running football team. So that defensive line is going to be really, really important in this matchup. At linebacker, you return DJ Lundy. That's a nice returning guy, right? 64 tackles, 6 TFLs, 4 pass deflections, and an interception in 2023. But behind him, you're just going to need some young guys, and transfers to step up here. And I'm specifically talking about the inside linebacker spots there in the middle. DJ Lundy, as I said, is a nice piece, but you've got to figure out who are those other guys. It looks like Blake Nicholson is going to be one of the guys there that's going to help out in the middle. Omar Graham, Cam Riley, who's going to step up and be that second guy there at the will linebacker spot there. This is going to be a really good Florida State secondary, guys. I don't foresee a passing attack in the ACC that's going to be able to just chop this secondary up. Now, Florida State was really, really, really good last year at getting after the quarterback. So my only concern is that maybe you're not so good at getting after the quarterback this year. Maybe you're not top 10 in the country at getting after the quarterback and sacking the quarterback like you were last year. What does that do to a secondary? I mean, obviously, the longer a quarterback has to sit back there and throw, the longer you got to cover, right? And it makes it that much harder. So I'm not concerned. I'm just interested to see, what this defense, how it will look different. Because as we said, the secondary was a strength last year. I think it will continue to be a strength this year. Yeah, you're led by top 2 corners, possibly top of the two of the top 2 corners, in the ACC, and Fentrell Cypress, who had 40 tackles himself last year, 8 pass deflections, and then Azare Thomas, he had like 10 pass deflections last year. Those are a couple of really, really good ones there. You bring back Omarion Cooper. He returns to FSU after a season in Colorado. He's going to be competing with Earl Little Jr. there at that nickelback spot. There's competition going on between really good players, and that's not even to mention some of the awesome recruits that you've got in that room kind of waiting in the wings. So I certainly think that this is going to be a really, really good secondary. How will the front seven hold up? How will they be able to attack the quarterback? That's going to be a question. I think that's going to be pretty tough against this Georgia Tech team who we're about to get into. So let's jump into that right now. Buster Faulkner, it makes his return as the offensive coordinator there at Georgia Tech. And this offense returns 86% of their production from last year. And look, guys, I'm one of those guys. I like to look back at last year and kind of see what your team was up to at the end of the year to kind of see, maybe do you have some momentum, or maybe you have the opposite of that. Maybe you dropped a few games at the end of the season and you're, kind of trying to turn things around and start things on a positive note. Georgia Tech had some momentum. I mean, they got a bowl victory over UCF last season to end the year, an 8-point loss to UGA. I mean, let's be real. As a team like Georgia Tech, and as bad as this defense was, I mean, we're going to talk about the defensive numbers in a minute. My God, some of the worst defensive numbers that I've looked at for a team to do a breakdown on. They hung in there. They lost that game by 8 points, right? Had some Georgia fans sweating a little bit at certain times. And, I don't think it put Georgia in the best frame of mind headed into that Alabama game. And I'm not here to make excuses about that. But, it does make you wonder. It was Georgia scores 30 points on one of the worst defenses in the country. And, then scored 24 points the next game. It seemed like Georgia's offense hit a lull at the wrong time. But I digress. Let's continue. Ended with a 7-6 record overall in 2023. I feel like you have to feel like that that is exceeding expectations if you're Georgia Tech. Getting to a bowl game and then winning it is just that was just icing on the cake. So I feel like this is a program that is headed in the right direction. As I said before, I think Brent Key is somebody who's all in on Georgia Tech football. And you know what? I think that he's the right man for the job. Now he's got his hands full with that defense. Let's talk about the offense first. QB Haynes King makes his return, 2,842 yards, 27 touchdowns, and here's kind of the bugaboo with him, guys. 16 interceptions last year. Going to have to figure out a way to protect the football, and it is a little puzzling because O-line we're going to get to here in a second, but only allowed 15 sacks last year. Did a really good job protecting their quarterback Haynes King. Now, he's a runner too, guys. So he gives you that option and really kind of keeps defenses on their heels with the fact that he had 737 rushing yards last year, which is, that's more than a lot of running backs. 10 touchdowns, that's solid. That is very solid. So maybe kind of makes up for the turnovers in a sense, but he still needs to cut those down. If you can get that down to maybe 8 or 9 this year, that I feel like that's reasonable to do and would really really help this Georgia Tech team out a ton. And he's just got to kind of work those progressions a little bit better too. Seemed like he was kind of a one read and done type situation at times last year, or if the first target wasn't open, then he was taken off, right? So I think you want to see him kind of progress through those options at wide receiver on the passing plays a little bit more this year, because he should have the protection to be able to sit back there and really pick apart some secondaries with some good wide receivers too. We're about to talk about here in a second. But before we do, let's talk about running back. 1,000+ yard rusher returning Jamal Haynes. Anytime you can return 1,000+ yard rusher, I feel like that is a really awesome thing to do. And then in addition to that, you bring a couple of your best playmakers back at wide receiver from 2023. Malik Rutherford, 46 receptions, 502 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And then Eric Singleton Jr. Had 48 receptions, 714 yards, and 6 touchdowns. He returns as well and really is an X factor on this offense. That third spot I feel like is kind of up for grabs there, and you're going to kind of see some different options at wide receiver there. But as long as these two guys are healthy, right, and that's a big asterisk next to that. This is football; you never know. But I feel like those two guys are pretty dynamic, and especially Eric Singleton Jr. I believe that they're going to be in pretty good shape there at running back and wide receiver. And we talked about the offensive line. This head coach was an offensive lineman, and it really showed. Last year, I said already, only allowed 15 sacks, and that was good for top 15 in the nation. So the rushing attack averaged 5.4 yards per carry. So not only are they good in pass protection, they're pretty damn good at running the football as well. 5.4 yards per carry is absolutely phenomenal. And you've got 4 of those 5 starters back. And then the one spot without a starter returning, which is right guard, you bring in an all-conference USA transfer, Keelan Rutledge. So I don't have any questions about the starting group. Now, this is Georgia Tech. This team hasn't really recruited within the top, 40 a whole lot other than last year. And actually, I think Georgia Tech just got a commitment from a 5-star for the 24 class, 25 class. So maybe things are ticking up, but this isn't a team that's got like ton of depth, right? You're not going to roll in 3 groups of offensive linemen, and not see a huge drop off. This group doesn't have a ton of depth, so you're going to need those guys to stay healthy. But if they do, as they pretty much did last year, then you're going to have a really good group. And then at tight end, Georgia fans, you're going to recognize these names. Brett Seether and Rylan Goody makes his way over from Mississippi State, and before that, they were both at Georgia at one point. So a couple of good tight ends. I like Brett Seether. He had a decent little year last year. Not an offense that utilizes the tight ends a ton. Excuse me, guys. This is more than a mouthful, and I'm trying to get you guys all the information you need quickly. Let's talk about the defense real quick. There's not a lot to talk about, guys. I'm going to be honest with you. We're not going to spend a ton of time with this. You see the numbers that are on your screen there. Absolutely putrid on defense. And I read that a lot of this defensive line, there was a lot of guys that played last year that ended up making their way out the door, and um, maybe that's by design, guys. I'm not sure. I'm not inside the locker room at Georgia Tech. I do live pretty close to Atlanta, but I don't have any inside sources or anything, so don't get me wrong. But maybe that was a good thing. This was a really, really bad defense. Returning anything off of this defense doesn't tell me a ton other than a couple of guys in the secondary who I feel like are pretty daggone good. But as I said, bad year, 123rd ranked total defense. That's 437 yards per game allowed in 2023. Kevin Scherer out at the defensive coordinator position. In comes former Duke defensive coordinator and Mike Elko descendant Tyler Santucci. One of the big problems for this defense last year was being able to cause no havoc was wreaked on any opposing offenses. Only 21 sacks in 2023. That was outside the top 100 in the nation. And it's not only about the sacks, guys. This team just didn't hurry the quarterback up a whole lot. And that you don't necessarily have to get the guy on the ground, but you've got to create some type of urgency for the quarterback getting the ball out of his hand. And Georgia Tech really just was not able to do that one iota in 2023. And it's really miraculous that a team as one-sided as they were pretty good on offense, as we just saw. Not bad. So bad on defense. It's amazing they were able to win 7 games, honestly. But that may just be that ACC schedule a little bit. Wasn't a murderer's row necessarily last year. So you return 50% production. As I said, I don't make too much of that, guys, but there's tons of new faces. Clayton Powell-Lee is a guy that is really, really good in that secondary. 70 tackles, 2 pass deflections, and an interception last year. LaMiles Brooks, 67 tackles, 6 pass deflections, 1 interception. I feel like those are 2 really good leaders there in the secondary. I think this is going to be a good secondary. 70th. This team was 70th against the run last year in total, and I don't know, guys. It just leaves a lot to be desired. We've got to see Georgia Tech make a big stride here, stopping the run, especially 131st in rushing yards per game allowed. So here we go. This is kind of how I feel like this game's going to go, guys. And Florida State is favored by 11.5 points. The over/under is set at 55.5. With Florida State looking to utilize their running back room and O-line, and Georgia Tech looking to do the same, I think this could be a really fast game. I think the clock is not going to stop a whole lot. I think this is going to be a low-scoring game, in my opinion. I mean, if you really think about it, both of these defenses, their strengths are certainly going to be their secondary. There's no doubt about it. I think both teams are going to be trying to figure things out, early on in the season. I think less so Florida State than Georgia Tech necessarily. I think Florida State will have a little more of an idea what their identity is going to be, specifically on that defensive line and that linebacker room. Georgia Tech has got all new faces in there. Couldn't be any worse than they were last year. So I'm suspecting that they will be better. I don't think Florida State is going to be better on defense than last year. I feel like I just don't think that would be possible with the guys that you had out the door. But with all that being said, I think that DJU struggles early. I think the FSU offense kind of sputters into the 2024 season. I think that you're going to see a run-first approach from both of these teams, and I think you're going to see a low-scoring game. And with that being said, give me the under that's set at 55.5. And guys, look, I'm not going to play the spread, but if I was, I would take the plus 11.5 at Georgia Tech. I think you can still find a plus 11 or plus 11.5. I saw it kind of went down to 10.5 there. That scares me off a little bit more, but I'm not as in love with the spread here as I am with the total. And the reason I say that is this spread feels like a backdoor cover for Florida State. It feels like they could score a touchdown late, punch it in, go up, by 14 and end up winning this game. But With that being said, with it being a low-scoring game, that is a lot of points. Anytime you have a double-digit spread in what you think will be a low-scoring game, typically you want to take that underdog there. But I'm going to let that dog rest on the porch there, and I'm playing the under 55.5. That's my play for the week. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to the First and Long College Football Show. This is kind of like a mini breakdown for you guys. I don't have my buddy Mason here to make me look smarter than what I really am. So we'll catch Mason back on here next week. We've got top 25 about to be released. We've got conference championship predictions about to be released, and then our college football playoff prediction is going to be released, guys. And that sucker is going to be a lot of fun. I can't wait to talk with you guys about it. Thank you so much for tuning in. We'll see you all next week. Happy week 0. Enjoy the one good game that we've got, guys. And then we will see you back here on the First and Long College Football Show next week to get it all broke down and really get this year started. We are so excited. Thank you so much for tuning in.